Lisa Haverly here, Nature Superhero Network, where we really try to inspire, connect, and empower other occupational therapists to take their skilled work outdoors in nature. And we know that it's a transformation from being an OT to then becoming a nature-based therapist. And I really believe in the power of storytelling and stories. And in that, then I have invited some other OTs to share their stories on how they arrived to this space of nature and providing therapeutic intervention in nature. So I'm excited today to welcome Marielise to this conversation of storytelling as she kind of shares kind of her story of nature connection to kind of what was the tipping point that brought her to this way of wanting to do therapy. So we're going to start with that. So welcome, Marielise, and maybe you just want to share a little bit about who you are, where you live, and then what's your nature connection story and what brought you to nature?
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Well, again, my name is Marielise Jacobs. I live in Florida. So we have some nice sunny weather all year round, which is awesome. And then the way I got connected, I'm an OT. I'm a school-based OT at the moment, but I have a background in I did outdoor education for about 20 years. So I came in and did that. And then so OT was really, this is my second career. And I loved being outside. I loved working with kids. And during my first semester of OT school, I realized that I could combine my outdoor experience with working with kids outside. And so here I am many years later, getting
Awesome.
ready to launch finally. I'm going to try to launch this year, start doing some private practice with kids outside. My connection to nature, I grew up in New York City.
Oh, okay.
So, but my dad loved nature and he always took us camping. So
Love
that
it.
was my first experiences, and I always loved to go. And then really, but we were in the city though. We only went during the summers, we
Yeah.
would go camping, but during the rest of the year, we didn't really do that many outdoor activities. It was just summer. Um, so in high school, we went to Disney. It's gonna sound really corny, but this is how it happened. So I went to Disney, and have you ever been to Disney to
Yes.
Epcot?
Yep.
Okay. They have an exhibit called the Living Seas exhibit.
Uh-huh.
So it was like a movie, where like everything gets quiet and the character like exhales.
Yeah.
That's where I made my connection to, and it's
Wow.
still my favorite environment, nature space is ocean and coast and I just fell in love. I don't really know how to explain it exactly, but after that, I decided I was going to become a marine biologist. And at that point, I didn't even know how to swim. Like it was just in my head. So, and then just later, once I was in college, I had a couple of professors who did outdoor. We did like field-based research, and I just fell in love with ecology and ecosystems and how everything's connected and how it all works. And so I was a biology major. So I did all animals and plants.
Very
Actually, when I
cool.
went back to OT school, I had to go back and take anatomy and physiology because
Yeah.
everything I had was animals and plants.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would love to know how you went from outdoor education to then thinking, I want to do OT.
To OT.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it doesn't seem like it connects, right? I know. Uh,
What I think is awesome is that you are a nature-based therapist now and you have all this knowledge about nature. Like,
yeah,
I mean, to me, that's amazing.
it's great. Yeah, I love it. Like I was just out with a friend yesterday. There's a spot that we're looking at taking kids kayaking. So, we got to look at it first and check it out first.
You do.
And I was with her and I wasn't noticing. I just automatically go into like naturalist mode, right? Like, oh, that bird, it's a blah, blah, blah. Oh, look at this one over here. And oh, look at this fish in the water.
Yeah.
And she was like, Marielise, she's like, it's not just the OT. She's like, everything. She's like, do you know all the plants that are around us right now? And I was like, well, yeah.
Yeah. Right.
and so it's great. It's really a wonderful way to put the two together. But so I trying to think back. I was working doing outdoor education, and I got burned out a little bit on bringing groups. I mean, I ran a program that saw like 10,000 kids a year. We did outdoor field trips for schools, right?
Mhm.
Um, awareness and appreciation for, right? It's environmental education. We're trying to get kids to understand why it's important, why it's wonderful, right?
Right.
Um, and they did. I mean, they were great programs, but I didn't feel like there was like a direct connection to change. Like
Sure.
they didn't all of a sudden become like environmental activists,
Yeah.
which is what I wanted them to. I
Right.
wanted them to all become.
Your goal.
And I realized that it was a little more complicated than awareness and appreciation. It was also about the person and what was going on with them and what their lens was on the world. And so I got much more interested in people.
Yeah.
And I started
Hmm.
in between doing outdoor work. I started working with Eckerd Youth Alternatives,
Mhm.
which is it's a it's a nonprofit that works with at-risk kids.
Mm.
But they have like outdoor wilderness camps is how
Okay.
they do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how I started doing adventure stuff
Sure.
and working and more on the mental health side.
Yeah. Great.
Um, I worked as an early intervention coordinator. So I was at an elementary school where we were that part of the program was trying to get the kids to not have to go to wilderness camp because the wilderness camps were adjudicated kids that
Sure.
they chose that program, but they had to choose a program or
Gotcha.
stay at the detention center kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And so, but I got trained on, and we got to visit all the camps and all of that. So that's how I got more interested in the people aspect, I think, right? And I also, when I was doing all my outdoor work, during when I worked with Audubon, the kids who did best with me, were always the ones that the teachers were like, "Little Johnny's terrible at school, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't believe how he is out here. He's answering all the questions. He's so interested in everything that's going on." You know,
Well,
so
moment.
I always
Yeah.
thought it was weird that the kids who always got in trouble in school were the ones that seemed to do the best outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I worked with Eckerd, and then after that, um, I got married and had a baby, and I was home.
Mhm. I see.
And while I was at home, I was teaching part-time teaching swimming lessons, and I had a mom and her daughter who was the mom was an OT. I didn't know, and she watched me with her daughter. And one day, like in the middle of lessons, she said, "Have you ever thought about being an OT? I think you'd make a
Oh,
good OT." And I
wow.
was like, "What is OT?" I didn't even know what it was really. I was like, "Is that like PT?" It's terrible.
Yeah.
It was,
Ah,
I did the stereotypical like, "What is
the
it? What
response.
is that?"
What is OT? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's when I started. I knew that I wanted to go back to work. Um, I looked at nature centers and things now. With the nature centers didn't fit with my family life anymore because they wanted me to work weekends and
Yeah.
things like that. And so I was looking for something else I could do, and I was like, well, let me check out this OT thing.
Ah,
And yeah, and then I knew that I loved working with kids. I knew that I liked helping people,
awesome.
and I went into it that way. And then, but once I was in, I was when I realized so it wasn't before I went to school. After I was in school and taking OT theory was when I realized how the two could marry.
So I
Yeah.
think then what I'm hearing you say then is kind of the struggle or the thing that drew you into OT then was thinking more about the person, the whole person, and how that person can have some transformation then in nature within that connection that can be facilitated either through education, but even
Right.
more than that, more like wilderness therapy or wilderness activities or adventure therapy, right?
Right.
Within the
Yeah.
realm.
That I became more.
Yeah,
Yeah. It wasn't just the environmental
right. Yeah,
um appreciation and awareness, which I still that's important, but it's
yeah,
actually about the whole person
right.
and
Yeah,
their connection.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so now, I mean, you have, so everybody that's listening, so you should know that she brings this whole wealth of knowledge to her OT skill set now that, of course, she's hoping to kind of merge the two. with a specific interest in adventure therapy, correct?
Right.
And looking at how she's going to bring that into her nature-based work. So maybe you want to just spend a little bit of time, maybe in a few sentences, kind of defining
Explaining.
adventure therapy and maybe an example of what that might look like.
Okay. So adventure therapy is, if you look at the word adventure, we got to define that first. An adventure is a novel experience that has perceived risk. And when I say perceived risk, it's not necessarily risky in and of itself, but it feels risky to the person
Right.
who's trying it, because I've never done it before.
Perceived risk. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and then what you're doing is you're taking that adventure experience and you're applying it in a therapeutic way. So when I say you're applying it, when a person's doing something new that feels risky, all kinds of skills have to come in. You have problem solving skills. You have to be willing to take that risk, to trust the therapist enough to enter into that risk with the therapist. It's a way to, if you finish that task and it's something new and it felt scary, you have accomplishment, you
Right.
get some personal growth, you get reflection, like, oh, if I could do this, maybe there's other things in my life I can
Right.
do that feel scary.
So maybe kind of that sense of empowerment.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's if you're looking for an outcome for a specific goal, you're working on the intrinsic factors inside of the person, things like motivation and a willingness to gain new skills so that they can reach their goals better, faster, with longer lasting results.
Yeah.
Right, better outcomes.
Yeah.
So that's how I would apply. So an example of that, like
Mhm.
we were talking before
Yeah.
we started recording, that like I went out kayaking. So if I took a child kayaking who had never been before, depending on what their challenges are, like let's say they are on the spectrum and they have some sensory processing challenges. So being on the spectrum, motor coordination can
Yep.
be, right, and a little
Yep.
bit of an issue. So everything from putting on a life jacket that may have textures that, you're enclosed and snapped into a life jacket. They may or may not like that.
Yep.
Getting into the kayak without falling in. I mean, you have to use all fours. You have to be bent down low. It's an unstable, right? Using a paddle needs coordinated motion. The sensory experience of where we were yesterday was in mangroves. Do you guys know what mangroves are? Right,
Do.
it's trees that grow in water, but
Mhm.
it was a tunnel.
Oh,
Like
cool.
it was above our heads. Like, but depending on, do not, if you don't like to be closed in, you might feel a little bit closed in. The sun was shining through the leaves and everything, so what the risk would feel like to the student,
Mhm.
right? That's all their own lens.
Perception. Yeah.
And then as an OT, I would be facilitating that process of getting them to have that experience, learn new things. Hopefully, my hope, of course, is that this will become a leisure activity for them. A leisure activity, something they choose to do, something they want to do because they think it's fun.
Right.
Um, that is my
Yeah.
hope, is that I'm introducing them to something that they will love
And I can see
and
you
want
kind
to
of
do.
scaffolding it too. Like maybe you'd try to get into the kayak on dry land before you go out into the ocean or something like that. I mean, I could see where your OT
Yeah,
land.
the friend who I was out with, she's like, well, how would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was asking me,
Right.
how would you do that? I was like, this whole kayak and paddle and the vest and everything, we would have that out before we ever got in the water. They would practice what it felt like to get in and out of the kayak and to put the jacket on and to sit in it for a little while and all of
Right.
it.
Or
Yeah,
you could bring in modeling and they could watch it, or you could have a video model of this is what we're going to be doing. I mean, there's like many ways that you could bring in that skilled part of the
right,
intervention. I mean, like all the prep to
right.
actually do the activity. Yeah.
So adventure itself, right? So all those things that we just talked about are all things that can be towards our goals,
Right.
even though it's adventure. It's an
Yeah.
adventure.
Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So if anybody is listening and they have a kind of a background in that, or think that that sounds really amazing, talk to Marielise because she is a wealth of knowledge on that. Like she has articles to share. So very cool. And I do think it can very much complement OT, therapeutic intervention as well. So awesome. All right. So I wanted to have you kind of share with us who you serve, what is your niche? I mean, and maybe it's adventure and OT together, but who are your kind of clients right now or future clients? Just tell us a little bit more about your practice, the name of it, where you're located, all those pieces.
So it's called, the practice is called Abound Therapy.
Abound Therapy, cool.
And I'm actually finishing up my website. It's going to be under Abound Outdoors.
Okay.
But as far as the kids that I'm serving, I'm actually trying to serve the kids and their families because I want to work with the kids. But the bigger idea is I want these families to enjoy each other and be outside.
Yeah.
You know, and quality of life, right? The end goal is for them to have time outside together. So the ages would be like 3 to 10 primarily. I mean, I work with some school-based. I've worked with kids of all ages, right? But I guess for my ideal client, right, ages 3 to 10, neurodivergent kids where, autism spectrum, developmental delays, ADHD, so it's not their disabilities aren't necessarily so much physical. There may be some physical too, but it's more the neurological things that are going on with those kids with developmental diagnoses.
Yep. Yeah. And so will you see them individually or small group or as a whole family unit?
Yeah. So, okay. So the end goal is a family unit.
Yeah. Okay.
But for now, I have to start small because I'm still working as a school-based therapist. So I'm starting off individual with individual, even though I'm working with the individual student, I'm also going to look at what they're doing at home and working with the families, but it'll be that individual and their family. Yes. But what I'd like to do then is during the summers, I would like to have water-based therapeutic camps.
Yeah.
That are inclusive of all kinds of kids, right? So it would be like my kids that have worked with me, but typical kids too. Maybe their siblings, right? And have them do, and I have to do water because Florida is so hot during the summer.
Right.
And I love water, so that works for me.
Yeah. For you too.
I'm planning on doing that, and then as far as more groups, and then I would also like to do some family events where the families get together, like if we did an overnight family camping trip or different things of that nature.
Awesome.
So the families can get to know each other and have their own community.
Yeah, right. I love that. So building community as well. Yeah. And so your outcomes then are perhaps developing leisure skills, but also on the activities of daily living too, kind of incorporating all of those pieces into those nature activities.
Yeah, I mean, it can be around self-care. Like if they have a hard time with dressing and fasteners, we can work on those outside. We can work on, I mean, even some of the school skills like writing.
You're putting on a life jacket, right?
That's true.
Of all the skills that are required. Yeah. And you would hope that if they're motivated to do kayaking or whatever, that they're going to want to get that life jacket on, right? So yeah, I would just think there'd be more motivation around working on those skills when you have that kind of sense of adventure that you are bringing in.
And then all the benefits of being outside, right?
Yeah. Right.
Added on. Because adventure, I didn't say this, adventure therapy can also be inside.
Yeah. Okay.
Like think of rock climbing gym.
Yeah.
Or like where you do the low ropes course initiatives and inside. You can do them inside, but when you do them outside, then nature becomes your co-facilitator, and it just works. Yeah, it works.
And we know there's a lot of research out there to support that. Nature as the context, a collaborator, all of those things. Okay, so that's your business. Where are you located?
I'm in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
You're in Cocoa Beach. Yeah. Wow, here I am in Wisconsin where we're expecting another 10 inches of snow.
I know, you need to come visit me.
I do. Cocoa Beach sounds amazing. Okay, so we're kind of getting here towards the end. But I wanted you to kind of share if you had any advice, anything that's been supportive of you as you've kind of made this transition. And I know this is kind of your side gig that you're starting, and that's exactly how I started for many years. So there's nothing wrong with that. But what kind of advice or resources do you think have been helpful to you as you've kind of honed in on this way of wanting to provide intervention?
So resources OT wise, following other OTs that are doing nature-based OT work like you. I've taken several of your courses. I love all your work, and I
Thank
love
you.
your philosophy and how you approach everything. And so and you've been doing it. What was it since a while? How long have you been doing it? Like since?
I launched my first set of camps in 2013. So yeah,
Yeah, so I
and
consider you like a mentor person because you've been doing it.
a long time.
And then there's others.
I'm still learning. I'm
Oh,
still learning.
I know.
Never stop
Me
learning.
too.
Now I'm learning about adventure therapy.
Yeah. Laura Park Figueroa
Yes.
with
Yep.
Outdoor Kids OT is
Yeah.
awesome. Marika Austin with
Yes.
Barefoot OT, and Angela, can't remember her name right now.
I
It's
think
True Line Enrichment. She's in
yeah.
Florida.
Yeah.
Are you up?
Rosenberg.
Yeah,
Rosen-
so looking at other OTs that are also doing this, and you know
Right.
what? Those OTs are so, well, we're OTs, right? We're we're just loving, nice people. And
Yeah.
so they are everyone just kind of takes you in and helps you with whatever you need, and if you have any questions. And it's not a huge group of people because not everybody's doing this work. So I feel like I already know a lot of the OTs that are doing it, you
Yeah.
know.
It's a cool.
So I definitely depend on them. And then uh, there's organizations that help too, like there's the Association for Experiential Education.
Mm.
They have, as far as adventure therapy and those kinds of things. What else? There's a lot of resources online. I feel like there's
Yeah.
so many things now.
Right. And maybe it
Research
kind
as
of
well.
depends
Research,
on what
like
you're looking for too. Go ahead. What was?
all the journals.
Yep.
Like I was telling you that outdoor education and from the educational perspective and adventure therapy, they all have their own journals and
Yeah.
evidence. And
Right.
so that's a whole nother side of being outdoors and
Yeah.
working with clients that it's more information.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like we draw from, at least for my research, I am drawing from many different, areas of expertise and not just OT, because nature-based therapy is such kind of a new thing that you are drawing information from many different fields of study, which as long as it provides some evidence, I think that's okay. That you have to kind of make
Yeah.
sense of it within the scope of practice of OT. And so that's for you to kind of draw those connections. But awesome. And then the last two questions here is, do you have a favorite nature space or kind of a quote that inspires you to do this amazing, beautiful work?
Yeah, my favorites are, I was trying to think specifically. I mean, I live in Cocoa Beach. I love my beach right here. But
Yeah,
I love coastal spaces, like where
yeah.
land meets water and everything that goes on in that space.
Yeah.
I think it's
Kind of call that blue space meets green space, right?
green space. Yeah. I think my favorite parts about nature are all the connections within nature itself. Like
Yeah.
I think are amazing or and inspiring. Yeah. And so my quote, I have it on my screensaver. It's Ralph Waldo Emerson, and it speaks more to kind of the spiritual connection that people have with nature, but it's nature is too thin a screen. The glory of the omnipresent God bursts through everywhere.
Wow, that's beautiful. I don't think I've heard that one before. You have to
Yeah.
share that with me. I love that. Yeah, and the spiritual connection is a whole nother thing we could talk about,
Yeah.
but we'll save that for a different conversation, because I do think there's richness there, and it can be huge for just the bigger picture of supporting people and kind of being, whether it be their best self or
And meaning making. Yeah.
and meaning making and sense of
Yeah.
purpose. So yeah, I love that stuff too. So thank you for sharing.
Welcome.
Any
Thanks,
other
guys.
closing thoughts or comments before we wrap this up?
Um, no, I'm nervous
Share your
sighted
story.
to launch.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time and
Yeah.
sharing all your wisdom and especially your story. So that's what it's all about. That's how we stay connected. All right. Thank you, Marielise.
Thank you.
Until we meet again, and we'll see you down the road.